There are quite a few plants that I use on a regular basis. One of the wild plants that I use is yarrow, or Achillea Millafolium. And yarrow is an amazing plant for inflammation. It's great for healing wounds that are having a hard time healing. And it's a styptic, so it stops bleeding. So if you had a cut or a bruise or some sort of varicosity, like varicose veins, applying a salve or the direct plant to the area stops the bleeding, decreases inflammation, and it's generally just a tonic herb. So we're going to identify that plant. I'll talk about where it's found and how to prepare it. As you can see, I'm in a abandoned field right now. This is in Ashby, Massachusetts. There's quite a variety of plants growing here. There's Celastrus or bittersweet. These are some very dead sumac trees. There's quite a bit of wood sorrel, and of course poison ivy. However, this area is filled with yarrow. And yarrow is a plant that's found mainly in open fields and waste places. It grows in pretty much any abandoned area, sometimes in domestic places, but often abandoned areas. And the part that I make use of mostly is the flowering tops. The leaves can be dried or made into a salve or a tincture as well, but there's far more constituents in the flowering tops than there are in the leaves. That being said, use whatever you have available if you need to use it. So when harvesting these, I usually will bring along some sort of a knife to cut them with. But the easiest way to harvest them is to look for the area right below the stem and just break it off there. And they should pop right off. And yarrow itself grows on a low-growing plant. It has these very feathery leaves. Maybe you can see that very well. And people worry about mistaking this for poison hemlock or wild carrot. It's a pretty distinct leaf. Millafolium, part of the Latin name, has to do with the millions of tiny leaves that make up this leaf structure. There's all these tiny, tiny, tiny pieces to the leaf. It's a very compound leaf. And Achillea, the beginning, because the Latin name's Achillea Millafolium. Achilles, supposedly, in battle, healed his soldiers with this. And he stopped their bleeding and sped up the healing of their wounds using yarrow. So it's a plant with a pretty rich history of use and very easy to identify. At first, look for those low-growing plants with the feathery leaves. It has a very distinct smell, so if you've ever purchased yarrow from a store, if you rub your hands on it, you'll know immediately that it's yarrow. And then around June, this is late June, it starts to flower and it sends up these umbel-shaped flower heads that have a couple connecting portions to it, but they're pretty tight-headed flowers. Almost like a wild carrot, but completely different as well. So again, we're looking for the feathery leaf and low growth at first, the stalk sent up around June, and the flowering top around mid to late June, at least in the eastern northern US. That's Achillea Millafolium. Now once you've harvested enough of these can be tinctured, so you could fill a mason jar to the top with this. Add in enough 100 proof or more vodka to cover it, and close it and you let it sit for 6 weeks. And yarrow tincture internally is used to not break a fever, as it's often said, but it's used to cause sweating. It has a mild antibacterial and antiviral effect, If you were to put it in water that was kind of questionable, it helps to kill some of the bacteria in it. It's good for fighting colds. Traditionally, people would make a tea out of the leaves or the flowering tops when people felt like they were getting sick, in order to quicken the illness's departure. And if this were made into a salve, these could be put in oil, so same concept as the tincture. Cover them with olive oil, and after 4 to 6 weeks, remove all the material, strain it out. And you could use the oil directly to help with wound healing, put it on bruises or scrapes, and it just generally speeds recovery. And this is a very tonic herb for the lymphatic system and also the kidney and liver. The one warning, I would say, overconsumption of this has caused mild kidney inflammation in some people. I've never experienced it. I use this herb pretty frequently, but I have read reports of that. So use this in moderation, as with all things. Again, this is Achillea Millafolium.